Hello, readers. This is Justin's 52 Books, where I discuss my selections for the 52 Book Club's 2023 Reading Challenge. And this is a special year. I'm only reading science fiction written by women. Maybe some adjacent genres like fantasy or horror, but I really want to explore the legacy of women writing science fiction with my 2023 Reading Challenge. And that's what we're doing. And we're jumping into week 3. And today I'm talking about Prompt 3, a book with a title that starts with the letter G. My selection for that prompt is Grass by Sheri S. Tepper, which was written in 1989. First off, some thoughts about the prompt. The letter prompts are, as straightforward as you can get when it comes to a reading challenge. Last year we had E and F. This year we have G, H, and I, and I'm starting G this week right now. And I've seen online in some Facebook comments that irks some people. Like I think they want to have a little bit more meaning in the prompts, or have the prompts push them into new boundaries or areas of literature. And I get that, and that's important, and I'm glad that push is there. But to me, even arbitrary prompts like letters speak to the appeal of reading challenges, at least for me. Any criteria, even simple criteria, make for new and special ways to look at and think about and choose the next book. G is a perfect example. I've seen Grass on many lists of great science fiction, particularly lists from 10 to 15, 20 years ago. Not 20 years ago, but 10 to 15 years ago. It was really high up on those lists of well-regarded science fiction. And quite honestly, it's fading into obscurity a little bit right now. It doesn't make those lists nearly as much as it used to. Now, some of that is science fiction turning into new areas, and some of that is just the natural progression. We get 100, 200 new science fiction books every year. It's probably lowballing it a little bit, and there's always this push for the new. So when the reading challenge came out and I saw the letter prompts G, H, and I, gave me a second to stop and think and regard the letter G and just look back at all the books I ever wanted, all the to-read piles that I've accumulated over time, and I was really happy when I realized I was going to get a chance to take the chance to sit down with this book that I wanted to read 10 years ago, Grass. The G prompt allowed me to stop and remember what I wanted to read a while ago. And that's really important to me. So what is Grass about? Well, it's space opera in a far-flung future, and I'm going to come back to that term space opera here in a second. But far-flung future, human diaspora on a multitude of planets. Space opera is an interesting term because to me that's a category of science fiction, that harkens back to old pulp or even pre-pulp characters and science fiction, Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, but also the Doc Smith's Lensman books, and just big stories set in space. But Grass really doesn't have much to do with space other than you got to get through space to get to the other planet. So maybe, I don't know if planet colonization or galactic empire would be another category or subcategory. I don't know. Science fiction has all these little subcategories, and one can get lost in that. But basically, it's about getting to a different planet and life on that other planet. And I would say that planet story certainly has a case for categorization in science fiction. In the book, there's this plague and the planet Grass, that's the name of the planet, the planet is discovered to not have the plague on it. The main character and her family have ties to this galactic theocracy, and in an interesting choice by the author, they actually don't belong to that theocracy. The book refers to them as Old Catholic, and so that allows for some interesting conversations and some interesting characters, and some interesting character interaction between monks of this theocracy and old school, new wave Catholic priests. So the family comes to Grass. They find this spaceport city and this interesting set of aristocratic families who have estates out in the wilds of the planet, and they're very separated from the city on purpose. These families engage in a hunt like old Earth aristocracy with mounts and hounds and foxes. Only the mounts are called hippi and the foxes are called foxen. I know, bear with me. Only all the animals are indigenous planetary creatures, and they're all telepathic, and the mounts are deadly maliciously intelligent and controlling the minds of their riders. The main character, Marjorie, spends the book figuring out the secrets of grass, its inhabitants, its former inhabitants, the Arabai, and the reasons for the plague. So, did I like it? Here are some things that I like. All that stuff I just said, that's a lot, and that's what's cool about grass. There's a lot there. There's a lot of world building, and it's kind of in the same sense as the granddaddy planet colonization book of science fiction, Dune. There's a lot going on, and Tepper is playing with some of the same ideas that Herbert was with Dune. So it's got a long tradition, but it's a very familiar book, but it's also very original and very enjoyable. Where it succeeds in great ways, particularly with the main character, Marjorie, a really great person to tell a story with. There's not a whole lot of science fiction, particularly like planet adventure stories, that are from the point of view of a matron of a family. I like what it had to say as well. Digressions into religious ideas and familial honor and archaeological settings almost made the book feel a little proto-Neil Stephenson, but not so much that turned other people off. There's a little bit of info dump there, enough that I liked it, but not so much that someone who didn't like Neil Stephenson would be turned off by it. But things I didn't like, and you'll see this online. The book has at its plot center horses in space. Again, horses in space, and not like the pioneer settler kind of like on the television show Firefly kind of horses. It's full on rich people fancy dancing their horses on the Olympics kind of riding. And on the face of it, that's absurd. It took me a moment or two to really acclimate myself to suspending that particular disbelief, which I'm really good at. I read a lot of science fiction, but it was a challenge with this one. What helped me, and what I would suggest to someone reading the book, is think of the hippi as the xenomorphs from Alien, which is only 3 times as big. Think of them as fearsome of creature as you can think of, and scary and monstrous horror type thing, rather than horsies. It doesn't help that they're called hippi. I'm not entirely sure why that was a choice that Tepper made, because it brings to mind little flapping ears of hippopotamus, for me at least. And so, yeah, that is a stretch. She does it well. And hey, it harkens back to an era of science fiction where you had ridiculous crap in books all the time. For science fiction being so fantastical, we are very much in a realistic era where we don't have a lot of crazy ass ideas in science fiction. Horses in space is a crazy ass idea. Other ideas or other thoughts about the book. Here's an idea. It's promiscuously third person, and that's not the right term, but it's the one I want to use to drive this point home. Promiscuously third person. Everyone's thoughts are written about, even the horses. And I'm not joking. There's a point where the horses are coming off the spaceship and they're groggy and they have no idea what's going on, and it's telling the perspective of the horse, which is cool at first. And I really liked it and appreciated the tact, because you don't have a whole lot of promiscuously third-person fiction out there. But at a certain point, right before the climax, Tepper takes it just a little bit too far, and it's right before the climax, and there's this part where it's like a round-robin discussion, only it's of their internal thoughts, and it's like a check-in, and everyone gets about a page or two to have their thoughts on display, and it totally took me out of the story at a point where I really needed and wanted to be in there. up to that point, the characters had been written well enough that I knew what they were thinking. I knew what their motivations were, and I didn't need that kind of breakdown. And it's only, only a small portion of the book, so it's not that big a deal. But it was this part that I really didn't like of an idea that I really did like. But ultimately, I am really glad I got to spend some time with this book. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect book. And the fox hunting allegory, it still leaves me scratching my head a little bit. But it was interesting. It's very well written, and it really made an impact on me by illustrating how few middle-aged, quasi-matronly heroines we actually have in science fiction. Perhaps that's a perspective that could serve us all reading a little bit better if there were more out there. Other books for the prompt of the letter G that I would suggest, not quite science fiction, but fantasy, would be The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. Favorite in our house, kind of a taking fantasy tropes and ideas and turning them on their head just a little bit, but still very familiar in a very familiar setting. Really like that book. Other ideas, not written by a female, but Goliath by Tochi Onyabuchi, which was put out, I think, last year in 2022, maybe 2021. That's probably one of my favorite science fiction books of the last 5 years, pushing science fiction in not necessarily new, but old ways that need to be reevaluated. Onyabuchi is using some old new wave of science fiction ideas, and really wrote a book that needed to be written, and that I really enjoyed. And the last G book that I would suggest would be The Gurkha and the Lord of Tuesday, written by Saad Hossain, a Bangladeshi author. It's just a tiny little book, 150, 170 pages, but a lot of ideas put in there, and a really fun adventure story. Gurkhas and Jen and Kathmandu in the far-flung future, and city-controlling AIs, and blighted nanotech blighted landscapes, I guess. Right, a lot of weird stuff, a lot of cool ideas that Hossain's playing with in Gurkha and the Lord of Tuesday, and I really enjoyed that book. Great G book for someone who was looking for one. And that's about all I have time for. Thanks for watching me talk about my thoughts on Grass by Sheri S. Tepper. This has been week 3 of Justin's 52 Books, and I was talking about Prompt 3, a book that starts with the letter G. For more information on the prompts of the 52 Book Club, you can check them out on their website, the52bookclub.com. You can also check them out on Goodreads, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm pretty active on the Facebook comment section, so maybe I'll see you there. You can also check me out on Goodreads and Storygraph at Justin's 52 Books. I hope to see you next week for Prompt 4, a book that starts with the letter H. We continue on, G-H-I. It's old, pre-Lovecraftian science fiction horror selection that I can't wait to dive into. Until then, happy reading.